Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Mark Isix.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How you doing today, Nick?
Getting very close to going back to school. Yourself?
Also getting very close since we work in the same district. I'm assuming we're going to start at the same time.
Yes, well, you have been working a little bit more than I have, though.
Not necessarily. You're always hard at work, so that's the one thing I know about you. That nobody outworks you. People might work the same as you, but nobody outworks you. That's one of the qualities that makes you so successful in the classroom.
Oh, it's very nice of you.
I felt like I was compelled to say that. No, but I sincerely mean that. And since you're talking about the first day of school, that's actually going to be the topic of our methods lab segment. But we'll get more into that a little bit later on in the show. But I wanted to start by talking a little bit about a workshop that I recently attended last week, which was sponsored by SANES, which is the School Administrators an Association for New York State. And they did a day-long conference on the new changes to A.P.P.R. And as you're very much aware, Governor Cuomo, in his latest budget bill, basically tied into that bill all sorts of changes to the teacher evaluation system. And he clearly is not happy that not enough teachers are being determined to be unsatisfactory, to fit his agenda or whatever it is that he believes is plaguing education. So because he didn't get the results that he wanted through the previous incarnation of A.P.P.R., he's now going back to the drawing board and making things more difficult for everybody and changing the numbers to try to make this even more of a nightmare for teachers and holding them accountable to an even greater level because he's not satisfied with the results that he's received so far. So one of the things, and I would like to try to get one of the individuals who presented, actually a couple of people who presented there were really great, but one of them was the attorney for SANES, and he was particularly good. And I'm going to reach out to him, see if we can get him on the show and really take us through those changes a little bit more specifically. But the long and the short of it is the scoring bands that they created for the HEDI scale, which is the highly effective, developing, and ineffective. It used to be, I'll say, a little bit fairer in terms of how the points were distributed. But what they are doing now is they're basically making it much more difficult to be effective and highly effective. And they're even making it difficult to be developing, to be honest with you. And they've just blown up the range for ineffective in the hope that they'll create a bigger web or cast a wider net and catch more people in the ineffective trap. And that is really troubling for me. Not that I don't believe that ineffective teachers should have job security and ineffective teachers should remain in the classroom, but this is just not the way to do it. And I know a lot of people in the room agreed with me and felt similarly. But I just wanted to share that with you, and we can go into a little bit more detail. Hopefully we can get that guest on, but I'll actually put a link in the show notes because there's a teacher from the Great Neck School District, who is in this, what they call like an outlier type of situation or an anomaly, where you are rated effective or highly effective by your school through your observations. But when the number comes back from the state, your state score is ineffective. So when that happens, what they're basically saying with the new A.P.P.R. system is that there's going to be a hearing for teachers who fall into this sort of anomaly range, which I can't imagine is going to be an anomaly. It's probably going to be more commonplace than an anomaly. But there's actually a trial. This woman, let me see if I can get her name, Sherry Lederman, her husband's an attorney, and I guess the state just picked the wrong person to mess around with, because now she's firing back on all cylinders. And like I said, I'll put a link to this in the show notes. But essentially, the judge who was overseeing this trial was not very happy with the defense that or the arguments that the state was making as to why she was this outlier and why she was, or should be considered ineffective by the state when she is a teacher that's held in very high regard in her district. So I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at the case at all.
No, I do know about that case, and I really don't have much to say. As long as we continue to play this game of trying to evaluate teachers based on student test scores, no progress will be made in education. And we'll be having the same discussion in 3 years and the same discussion in 5 years and 10 years because all it's going to take is a lawyer to go up there and say, you have middle school, third through eighth grade exams in which kids must get a one. It's a bell curve,
Right.
correct?
And that's the
So
argument
there
that
you go.
the attorney was making here
Right.
defending Sherry.
So we will just continue to litigate while more students are falling further and further behind. And it's just so depressing. It really is. Somebody, and I guess it does have to come from way up top. Somebody has to stand up and say, education in this country it's not equal across the board, and you cannot use the same criteria to judge and evaluate schools right now. You just can't do it.
And the most offensive part of this to me is that the computer models are supposed to be generating what students in your classroom are supposed to be like and how they're supposed to perform based on a whole host of factors, including whether or not they get free and reduced lunch and where they live and if they're lefties or righties, I guess. And these computer models are supposed to, in a sense, already know how your kids are supposed to do.
Right. That's a complete waste of time.
And then if they don't as well as the computer models are determining, then you have failed in the eyes of the state.
Right.
And it's disgusting. I don't know how else to describe it. It really
Yeah.
is just
There
disheartening
really
and
is.
disgusting and frustrating. And it's the law, and we're first going into it now, which is really gonna get even uglier. And this is one thing I concluded when I was walking out of the conference is this is a great time to be an educational lawyer because you're going to get yourself a really nice boat and a really nice car and a really nice
Absolutely.
vacation home because there are going to be a lot of these cases as more and more people are determined to be ineffective in the eyes of the state, even though they have years and years and years of stellar performance in their given school districts, and they're going to come back fighting, and they should. And the unions are going to be lawyering up, and the administrators unions are going to be lawyering up, and the state is going to have to go to war, and it's going to get bloody because that's what happens in wars is that they never really go well for anybody, even when you win.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are very disheartening, um, there was the valedictorian of our school from 2015 was published in New York Newsday. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Her name is Casey Candela, and I have to say, just on a side, she is one of the finest young women that you will ever have the pleasure of meeting. She is bright, she's articulate, she is hardworking, she's just stellar in every conceivable way, and really so proud of her. And it was a pleasure to know her for the years that I did and have the opportunity to work with her. She's one of those rare students that you come across and you remember them forever because of how impressive they are. And Casey, like I said, valedictorian, and she had her heart set on a whole host of Ivy League schools, but I think among the top was Georgetown. She really wanted to go to Georgetown. I know it's not technically an Ivy, but she has an interest in politics. Anyway, so she wrote this article for Newsday. She got into Georgetown, but they didn't give her really the kind of aid that she would need in order to go there. And so she didn't get to go to her dream school because she just couldn't afford it. And her parents are, as she says in her piece, middle class, blue collar, hardworking people, and they just don't have the funds to pay $67,000 a year to send her to her dream school. And she lives in a very in an area in Nassau County, which is unlike in most parts of the country, where if you have $100,000 family income, you're not considered rich by any stretch of the imagination. Whereas if you had that same income somewhere, perhaps in rural, Tennessee or somewhere out in Montana, that might go a long way. But here in Nassau County on Long Island, that doesn't get you too far. And it certainly doesn't give you $57,000 extra dollars or $67,000 extra dollars to send your kid to Georgetown. So she wrote this piece, and what were your thoughts about the piece?
Yeah, well, I'm so far removed from the financial aid aspect of college, but it's disconcerting that don't take cost of living, I guess, and the high tax area that we live in into account. I get is that the case really? That they don't when they're using financial aid numbers? Because I'm not familiar with that, and I think her point was that it might look like her parents make, like you just said, a decent salary compared
Mhm.
to kids in, Montana or Iowa, but the cost of living is so much more here. So I thought she articulated herself very nicely. She does seem like a wonderful student. I think what I was saying to you is in the long run, because she did get a full scholarship to Fordham, correct?
She did.
So in the long run, it will be better for her because um, she will probably go on to graduate school, and if she continues on this trajectory, she'll probably go to a top graduate school.
Without a doubt.
I think we both agree that every college is good. It's what you put into it. So I think she'll
Of
have a great
course.
experience at Fordham. But of course, in the short term, her disappointment was clearly evident in her piece.
I agree. And it's so sad because you obviously wish well for all the students that you come across, but the ones who have really taken to heart the message of working hard and persevering and challenging yourself to take the most rigorous courses, and when they do all of those things, and you want them to sort of win, right? You want them to come out with the brass ring at the end. And when they don't, not that Fordham isn't a great school, because it is, and if she got a full ride, and that's incredible. But you want them to get their dreams to come true. And
Y-
if she has that dream school, you want her to have it, because if anyone, not that anybody in this world is owed anything, but if anyone deserves something, it's a student like Casey Candela. And so when she doesn't get that, you definitely, your heart goes out.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Each year I teach the top juniors in my school. So when the year gets close to the end, I do give them a few days of college talk. And one of the things I have said repeatedly is I feel very sorry for all of you because you do have to take finances into account. When I was your
Hmm.
age, I guess, 25 years ago, making the same decision. And it wasn't as if I was, upper class. My parents didn't go to college. My father owned a bakery. But I didn't have to worry about the financial aspect of college. The price has gone up astronomically. So I said, while I feel badly for you, I say this to the kids, you do have to consider it. You can take out, she could have taken out student loans and she would have been paying them forever. You know, so in the long run, you do have to look at the big picture and what do you see yourself doing? And how much do you think you're going to make? And is it going to be worthwhile to be spending all this money for these schools?
Right. And 25 years ago, an individual like this may have only needed 4 years of undergrad education to get to where she wanted to go professionally.
Right.
But now the likelihood that someone can only do 4 years of undergrad and not need any type of graduate work in order to get to that next level is much lower. So she's not just looking at roughly a quarter of $1 million over, or more than that, over the 4 years. But then she's first looking at another 2, 3, or 4 years, or whatever it is that she's looking to pursue after that, of graduate studies and graduate tuition. So she could be looking at $400,000, $500,000 in debt by the time she's done with all of this, and then she's first going to come out and get an entry level job someplace. That's not a sustainable model
No.
at all.
And the only person that's really talking about it, I know Hillary Clinton came up with her idea the other day, but it's really only Elizabeth Warren, I feel like, who's
Hmm.
brought this to the forefront. And I think more people need to start to realize that we need our politicians to speak up with
Well,
an active plan to deal with the rising cost of college.
that's definitely another topic for
So
another day. But what I thought was interesting in speaking of the Casey Candela article was that this morning in the New York Times there was another piece by Victor Fleischer in the op-ed section, and it was entitled "Stop Universities from Hoarding Money." And I thought this was just a fascinating look. I know that the Times had looked into Harvard's endowment, maybe it was a few months ago, and there was someone who had written an op-ed piece basically saying that Harvard should never charge another dollar for anybody to ever attend that school again. And it looks like Yale's sort of in the same boat. And this is what the gist of the article or the column was. And I thought it was just the numbers were just staggering. I'll just read a little bit from it. Last year, Yale paid about $480 million to private equity fund managers as compensation, about $137 million in annual management fees, and another $343 million in performance fees. And this just on the side, this speaks to how private equity essentially works. It's like a two and what they call 2 and 20. I think they even mention it in this column, a 2 and 20 kind of pay scale, where you basically are paying 2% of the amount that you're putting in for them to manage, and then they get 20% of the profits, if there are any. And with the market being as strong as it is, there certainly have been profits over the last few years. So they're managing billions of dollars of Yale's endowment. But here's the crazy part. So they gave away approximately $500 million to private equity and as compensation. But when you scroll down a little bit more in the article, you'll find that they only gave 291 million in scholarships, tuition, and room and board to its students. Again, we were talking about things that just make no sense. I understand I understand them, but they make no sense. When Yale has this kind of money in its endowment and it's giving away more money to private equity managers than it is to their own students so they can attend Yale, then something is just tremendously wrong. And they have these billions and billions, and the interest on this money is in the hundreds of millions, or in a good year, maybe even in the billions. So why are they making it so difficult on the students who have to sacrifice everything in many cases, especially if they're coming from lower income or middle income families, when they have to sacrifice everything to attend their schools, when it's just not necessary because the school has been fortunate enough to have, I think, a $24 billion endowment fund. It just, it's so frustrating.
And I have no answer for you. It's so disturbing to think that they could just sit on all of this money and still have these kids who are, you know, taking out loans that are going to be paying out for 30 and 40 years. But what else can I say?
I know. In the column, he says in 2012, Harvard spent about $242 million from its endowment on tuition assistance. And in 2014, it paid $362 million in private equity fees and nearly $1 billion in total investment management fees. The private equity people are making, $3 or $4 for every one that Harvard's giving out in assistance. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, we're not going to get anywhere with that. Moving on,
Yeah,
moving on right along.
yeah, I'm really frustrated. Yes, I agree. We're not going to be able to solve this one during this podcast, but maybe next podcast we'll be able to solve it. Moving on to the methods lab segment. We are getting close to the first day of school, and I just want to spend some time talking about the first day and how important it is. And I guess let's get started by discussing, how do you prepare for the first day? What's your philosophy behind that preparation?
Well, I've always felt that the first day of school is, without any question, the most critical day because you will never get the opportunity. You have a classroom full of students who are just waiting to see what are you all about. And that first impression, that's your only opportunity to emphasize what you want from your students and what this classroom atmosphere is going to be like all year. You set the tone on day one. Now, I've always felt very frustrated because I feel as if most students are going to be sitting in classrooms on the first day in which teachers are going to read off their names alphabetically, and they're going to be standing around the room, and they're going to be seated row by row, and then they're going to be told everything they're going to learn this year, and then they're going to be told all the rules and what they're not allowed to do, and this is going to be very hard, and what are we going to culminate with the test at the end of the year? And I say to myself, imagine being a kid who's just been on summer vacation and you come back to 8 periods of this.
Mhm.
7, 9, whatever.
Mhm.
This is how you walk into the room. Now, I've always done something different. Now, as a social studies teacher, it's very easy for me to come up with ideas because I usually just link it to something that went on over the summer. But in with you talking about this as our podcast today, I did do some research. I have to tell you, Mark, fortunately, there are a lot of teachers out there that are doing really good things on the first day. There's a whole Twitter blog where people are posting ideas about what they do on the first day. I listened to a podcast today from a math teacher in Texas, and this school looks remarkable. Coppell High School. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Um, but he talks about in his math class how he spends the first 5 days talking all about research, organization. He gives these kids all these activities to do. And he said the first year I had it, a couple of parents called up and said, they were polite, he said, but we're concerned. Are we going to finish the curriculum? Because that's the mentality that we're living in today.
You're right.
He said, I need to impress on these kids the importance of being curious, being passionate to learn,
Mhm.
and the right way to perform research. It was, I guess, it's a math class that involves a lot of research, and he says, I need them to know how to do this properly. We think that because they grow up with Google that they know how to do all this. So it was so encouraging. There was a foreign language teacher I was listening to, and she has the kids on the first day discuss and debate the merits of Google Translate and is it a good tool to use in the classroom. Like these are good,
Wow, that's
yeah.
awesome.
And I'm telling you, there are teachers all over the place. Now, I personally always want the kids to know from the beginning that this is their class, and I want them to know that I'm interested in them, that I want to hear from them, that their opinion matters, that we're in this together. So I always try to set the tone on the first day, and I do something different each year with all of my classes.
I'm a
I
little
think
thrown
it's
by the
imperative.
fact that there's another podcast that talks about education.
Sorry about that. Um,
I couldn't agree with you more. The only thing I would throw in there, you talked about how you set the tone when they come into the classroom. Actually, two stories. One, when I first started teaching, I started as a sub, and I did a lot of long term sub assignments. And you could come in on day two, and you could be there for 179 days, but it's not your classroom. You have to be there on day one. When you are there on day one, something happens. You are the name on the schedule or on the letter that goes home, or however people are notified. That is so meaningful, and it creates a certain bond with the class that you just can't get on day two. That's the one thing. The other thing is, you said you set the tone, when they come into your classroom. I would argue that the tone starts to get set when they get their schedule and they see the name Simone next to, AP US history, for example. They will get into contact with whoever else they knew who had you. You're a known entity in the school building. You have a reputation. That tone is established when they find out that they have you before they even get into your room. You have kids coming into your room already amped up and excited, by and large, to be in your room because they know what you're about. They've heard how incredible your class is from other kids, and they are now going in there knowing that this is going to be unusual because they're going to get to have Simone as a teacher, and they're going to get to experience all of that, and it's going to become they're going to get to share in that and get to say that they had you because you're a fixture in that school.
but I think
Um,
yes,
but you have to maintain that.
but
Don't get
that's
me
my
wrong.
point.
You
Yeah,
can't just coast on that.
right.
It's like Joe DiMaggio said once. Someone asked him why do you try so hard and give it your all every single day. And he said somewhere out there in the crowd, there's someone who's seeing me play for the first time, and I owe that to them. So you're very much similar, in philosophy, but so you have to maintain that. But conversely, there are names that people get on their schedules and they get the dreaded, "Oh my god, I can't believe you have that person. You're going to hate it. You're going to this and that." And you get all the negative stuff that comes in. So they walk into your room already, you're already down in the scoreboard because they're coming in with a negative perspective. Now you have to not only you have to work hard just to get back to zero. or get back to kind of ground level.
Yeah, I just think everybody always begins with a clean slate. That's what's beautiful about the first day of school. It doesn't matter what your
Most,
reputation is. Doesn't
most.
well, I'm going to be more idealistic and optimistic. I
Okay.
think because what happens on the first day of school, and I'm not going in order. Kids come home and that's the one day that every parent is probably asking their child, his or her child, how did the first day go? What
Right.
was your favorite class? What did you enjoy? What are you looking forward to? Kids walk out of classes on the first day. They talk to each other.
Hmm.
Oh, that looks like it's going to be a fun class. Oh, he looks like he's going to be a cool teacher. You get that opportunity that you will not get ever again to make that first impression. So it doesn't matter what your reputation. I don't care what you've done in the past. I wish every teacher would understand. And by the way, what I've been reading, it's not just the first day. There's a whole program for the first 5 days
Hmm.
that people think you really can't just do this. You can't do it on one day and then on day 2 read all the rules. And by the way, just from a practical standpoint, what I never understood, why would you want to read all of the rules and make all these guidelines when your classes are going to change in the first couple of days anyway? I don't understand. To me, it's illogical. We all know there are schedule changes. So
If you don't
what?
go over the rules on day one, can you imagine the bedlam on day two, Nick?
I just so I j- so I just I wish again I was encouraged by my minimal research today on the web that there really is a movement that a lot of people are realizing how critical it is. I get so excited. I'm very fortunate because one of my classes I work with the English teacher, and she already called me today. When are we going to get together to work on our first week? She can't wait. And I think that was something that I kind of pushed her in that direction when we started working together. That,
Hmm.
we can't just do the first day. Here's what the AP class, I mean, just think about AP courses. What does every
Oh,
teacher
forget it.
say? Oh, what is it?
Hmm.
We have no time to waste. We have to, I mean, I'm sure there
Hmm.
are teachers that start PowerPoints day 2
Or day one.
or day 1 or summer. So it's so infuriating because I think that's when you take away the love of learning that we want to instill in kids.
Right. So then what do you say to the teacher who has yet to embrace this, who is paranoid that he or she is not going to, if they give up this time now, it's going to come back and bite them later on, then they're not going to get to finish the curriculum. So how do you get them to relax and get them to open their eyes to this new philosophy or this important philosophy?
Well, I know you always put me on the spot with these questions on how to reach teachers. I feel like every teacher is different. So I would want to know the personality of my teacher and then use that in my favor. So, for example, if it's a teacher that is just giving an inordinate amount of work, I would try to say to him or her, if you send a message early on that the workload might not be that horrific,
Hmm.
they actually might work harder for you and be less inclined to just copy the work, which is what they're doing anyway. Be realistic. Um, I think
No, but we make them write it by hand so they can't copy
Oh
it, right?
yeah, exactly. If it's a teacher that has a more of a dry reputation, I would say to them, they might be more inclined to really be comprehending material if you put more of the onus on them and set that tone early on. Give them an activity where you clearly demonstrate that you care what they think. I think
Right.
I think we underestimate the power of that, of when kids feel like the teacher actually cares about them.
Hmm.
I think but you can't just say that. You
Right.
can't come in front of a room and say, I care about you or I want all of you to do well, but
Right.
this class is going to be hell. You have to
Right.
show it through your actions and through your lessons. I just, to me, it's a no
And give them
brainer.
ownership, a sense of
Yeah.
ownership in the class.
Yeah. And I feel as if kids will want to work more for you when you do that.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Because they want to earn your respect. They want to earn your trust. They want you to keep doing those things that you're doing, which makes the class exciting and interesting. And they don't want it to revert back to the class that's not interesting
Right.
or that's tedious for them. And in many cases, it's a treat when they step into your room because it's a break from the PowerPoint presentations and a break from getting scolded and a break from being told about, how difficult the test is going to be and so on. And they actually will thrive in that environment. But You said something interesting a moment ago, and I wanted to just sort of investigate that a little bit more. You said, "Oh, this is going to be the cool teacher." And I think this is where sometimes even the best intentioned teacher goes a little bit awry. They think that being the cool teacher is being the one who is very kind of relaxed in the sense that they almost are acting or conducting themselves like they are that age, and they're hip, and they use inappropriate language, and they, do certain things that are supposed to be just sort of cool and of a particular, of that age group. That to me is not the cool teacher. That's not the right direction to go. You have to frame in the first few days what cool is in this class.
Right.
Cool in this class is speaking your mind. Cool in this class is thinking. Cool in this class is working as hard, if not harder, than you've ever worked before, because that's what I'm going to do as the teacher when I prepare and when I come in here. I'm never going to be unprepared in here. And I have the same expectation for you that we're going to get through this together in a very positive way, but in a way that's collaborative. Cool in this class means blank. I think you have to define and frame what cool is, and not just sort of anticipate that they'll only think you're cool if you talk about the latest music or the latest movies or the latest whatever. Not that that's bad, because that's great. It's a great way to stay relevant and sort of in touch with what they're listening to and experiencing. And I think you could use that to your advantage when you are, giving assignments, and when you're teaching, and when you're communicating with them. But I think that you have to redefine what cool is going to be in your classroom, and then you become the cool teacher, but for the right reasons.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying that this is what kids say. I mean, they walk out of class and they're going to make these comments. And as a teacher, you should be aware of that. It doesn't mean you have to succumb to try to be the cool teacher by, you know, lowering your standards. That's in no way what I was implying. Um, I just,
But that's what happens
yeah.
sometimes. They
Well,
they they have the little rap sessions, and they want to talk about,
right.
relationships and this and that, and they misuse class time, and they misunderstand what it means to be sort of connecting with the kids.
But I think there definitely has to be a balance because it really is for again, every student is different. And for that kid who is incredibly withdrawn, finding out what her interests are and maybe asking something as she walks into class, that's important. That
Oh,
we don't
absolutely.
realize, teachers don't realize how much that helps kids, how much it gives them the confidence. I mean, you should do your best to reach every one of your students. And part of that is, so I mean, I mean, I don't think that's the most important part of this discussion anyway. I understand what your concern is, that you don't want people to be the cool teacher by lowering their standards.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm more excited about just the thought of what can be done on the first day of school. I just think that's so invigorating, at least for me as a teacher. I get
Hmm.
so excited for it. And I just can't wait to be able to send that message and deliver it to the kids.
Right. And don't squander that opportunity, because
Yep.
you don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
No.
And you know what I would recommend, if there are teachers, who are gearing up for day one listening to this podcast right now, is I think the simplest thing that you could do to set the tone that you want to send is to stand in the doorway on day one and say good morning or good afternoon to all the kids with a smile on your face. That goes so far, you can't even imagine. Like, I remember when I first started teaching, and what was the thing that everybody told you? Don't smile until Christmas, or don't smile until Thanksgiving, or whatever it is, because you have to set the tone that you are going to be no nonsense, and they are, they have to understand who's the boss. I don't think there's ever a question who the boss is. You are the boss, right? You have to just carry yourself in that way, and I think you're the boss because you set the tone. That's what makes you the boss, not because you're the ogre, or because you're mean, or because you don't smile. I think that goes in the completely opposite direction, that's not a sign of weakness. It's just not. It's a sign. If anything, it's a sign of confidence and strength.
Right. Yeah. I just feel as if every teacher think about a building that the administration basically instructed all teachers to do something like this. Said, I do not want to see on the first 2 days of school anything regarding rules and curriculum and what we're learning all year. I want you to do something. Imagine,
I can see the rebellion already because
well,
I know you're kind of laying down the gauntlet to me, and I'll pick it up. I have no problem with that.
well,
But
I just, I really, well, I really wasn't even laying down the gauntlet, but I just think about how inspired the students would be. Think about how many kids would be looking forward to coming back to school the next day. Doesn't mean listen, it's not going to be the cure all for everything.
of course,
It's not, but it's a step in the right direction. It most certainly is. It's a step in the right direction. I mean, I've already had several kids email me about how eager they are to take because I have an elective that I'm teaching this year, and they can't wait to take comparative government. That's exciting. These are kids I had last year, so they know I've already set the tone. But it makes me feel good that kids in the summer are already thinking about what am I going to do on the first day of school and sending me emails regarding it.
well, I mean, again, that speaks to what I said before. You're a brand name, and when they see your name on their schedule, they already have a sense of what they're going to get. It's like when you get a luxury car. I mean, you get a BMW, you get a Lexus or a Mercedes. I mean, you have an idea of what you're going to get. You're going to get something that's really of the finest quality. You're a brand name. You've earned that, and it's because of how you go about handling yourself and handling your business and how you interact with kids and so on and so forth, and your work ethic and everything altogether. But so you have helped yourself in that regard because there aren't many teachers that I know of who are having those kinds of exchanges. There are some, and those are usually the people who have, like you, have earned those kinds of reputations. But most, for whatever reason, haven't, and they don't have that kind of correspondence.
Yeah, I think it's more than I hope it's more than we think. I guess I'll leave it at that. I hope a lot of teachers are really uh, getting the idea of making these first couple of days different because once you do it, you're not going to go back. I
Right.
think that's once you do it that first time, then it's ingrained in your routine. So you don't lose people off of this because it's a no brainer. It's a no brainer. It's just more exciting. Who wants to, as a teacher, wants to come back and just read rules 5 times anyway on the first day of school? That's how you want to come back to your kids? It makes no sense.
Well, obviously, I agree with you entirely, but the question from now my perspective on the administrative side is how do I get people to wade into the pool? And it's just this is that what you're describing is not just sort of this natural thing that people would do because that's not how they're trained when you go to college when you take college courses on
Right.
methods and so on. The professors are not telling you make day one exciting and fun. They're telling you on day one make sure you get your rules out and make sure you assign seats. They're teaching people in the wrong direction, and it sticks because these are their formative early years, and that's how they've done it, and that's how they're going to continue to do it. Or their curriculum is so tightly packed that they don't even have time to do anything. As soon as the kids get in there, they say, "How you doing? Welcome back. Let's get started. Open up your
Yeah.
notebooks and let's begin." And they're off with lesson one. So I just I think you maybe take for granted how simplistic you think this is for people to just sort of hop over to this new way of thinking, or this different way of thinking. And there are some, of course, who do, and it's wonderful. But there are others who would just cling very tightly to their ways. And I guess the question on my end is, how do I get to impress upon people, making this transition, um,
Well,
and benefiting from it.
well, you sell people the way we've just had this dialogue, and then you hope more people will do it. Like any other initiative.
That's right.
We're back to I don't know, episode 4. I mean, you can't mandate it, but you try to sell it and you try to explain the benefits of it, and then you hope that some people do it, and the more people do it, the more it'll spread. I know you think I oversimplify things. I just feel as if once you are involved in it as a teacher, like with anything else, you won't go back. But you have to be willing. Teachers have to be willing to take risks. They have to be willing to take chances. They have to be willing to change things. It's just we can't take out our thumb drive or whatever you call those these days and just say we're up to lesson 53. You can't do that. Teaching is not that's not what I went into the profession for. Teaching is fluid and is constantly changing. So and that first day, at least for me, that it sets the atmosphere for that class all year long.
I
So,
agree. I agree.
and I have really good ones this year, so I'm excited.
Well, all right. Even though you weren't throwing down the gauntlet, I accept, and I will do my part in trying to inspire the faculty in my school to do exactly this and really make these first few days count. I know that when I made the change from reading the rules and so on and so forth to doing something creative and doing something fun and interesting, it just made the first day so much more enjoyable for
Oh yeah.
me and for them. And I never looked back after I did that. And my regret was that I didn't figure this out earlier on, and that no one just sort of took me off to the side and kind of slapped me around a little bit until I saw that this was the better way to go. And once I did, and it came to the realization, it just made all the difference.
Yep.
So with that said, I definitely hope that people will take our advice and your advice in particular, and make the first day of school, the first days of school, really memorable and meaningful, and really set the tone that you hope to set, and carry it out throughout the entire year. So with that said, let us get to our standard stuff at the end here of the podcast. If you'd like to follow us on the web, you can reach us at or find us at stateofedpodcast.com. If you have a question or you'd like to suggest a topic, you can do so at ask@stateofedpodcast.com. We are also in the iTunes store. Please subscribe to us. You could just search for State of Ed Podcast, or either of our names will do the trick. You could also follow us on Twitter at SOE Podcast. We'll put links to the various articles that we discussed. And that is our episode for this week. So thank you very much, Nick.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Have a good one.
You too. Take care.